What's up guys, welcome to Daily Dose of Reddit. This is your host, Zach, and today's subreddit is r/TalesFromTechSupport.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode.
This story's called The Mystery of the Missing Computer. In my last post, I mentioned that I am currently working on a project to update a bunch of computers to Windows 10. For the project, I am given a list of computers that need to be updated. I then have to track down the registered user for the computer and contact them about the update. I contact most users by email, but if they don't respond, I call them. Some people get really cranky and stressed if I call them, but I just remind them that I've tried to reach them by mail and they wouldn't respond. It's also worth noting that sometimes computers turn out to have been scrapped and the office didn't go through proper procedure, so it remained in the system anyway. One such user got 4 emails. All of them were sent so the previous mails were visible below. I knew for a fact that he had been online several times since my first email to him, so eventually I started calling him. He ducked the first call. I waited a while and called again. This time he responded, but he was very stressed out and didn't have time to talk. He promised to call me in a few hours. To the surprise of nobody, he didn't. I called him again the next day. He, again, told me he was too busy to respond, and that he would come back again. Almost immediately after he hung up, I got a call from his manager.
"Why are you disturbing my employee with all these phone calls?"
"We are currently running updates on all computers, and there is a computer registered to him that is running Windows 7. I tried to reach him by mail, but I couldn't get a response."
"Computer? He doesn't have a computer."
I guess it's been scrapped then?"
"No, he has never had a computer. He has no need of one."
"Okay, weird that someone assigned a computer to him then. Is there any other computer around?"
"No, nobody has a computer. We're truck drivers. Why would we need a computer?"
"I don't know. Sorry, I'm just going by the information I've been given. But if that's the case, sorry for the interruption. Have a..."
"We don't need computers to drive trucks. Not yet."
"Yes, that's true. Well,
So none of us have a computer."
He seemed completely oblivious to the fact that I had tried to end the call 2 times now, but I decided to be extra sure about the computer. "So you haven't seen a computer named 69420 somewhere?" Obviously not the computer's actual name.
"No, there aren't any computers at all around here."
"Okay, well then
we do have one computer, but that's a shared computer."
We had now magically gone from no computers to 1 computer. It was progress. "What's the name of that computer?" "It's listed with a label on top."
"It's 69420.
He read each number without even hesitating a second, so he was clearly by the computer as we spoke. "So, 69420.
"No, 69420.
It's worth noting that the numbers are written out in full like 69420, and I added the extra 0 to make it funnier to read. It's really just 4 numbers. He seemed incapable of reading them any other way than by each individual number. "Well, that's the computer we were looking for."
"But this isn't user's computer."
"Well, it's registered to him."
"But it belongs to the company."
"Obviously, you muppets. Why would the IT department be calling him about his private computer?"
"Yes, but
user is the registered user. It doesn't really mean much mostly, but someone needs to be the registered user."
change it so the company is the registered user."
"I can't do that. It needs to be an employee."
"Hey, user, hey, user. He says it's yours. Well, apparently he can take it home."
I laugh at my own jokes too, so I can't really blame him. The difference is my jokes are actually funny, and there is actually a joke in them.
"Yeah, so that needs to be changed. The company owns it."
I really can't give a frick at this point. "Sure, whatever. Is anyone using it right now, or can we run the
It really doesn't make any sense to say that anyone here owns it more.
At this point, I am full on sitting with my forehead on my desk in frustration. "Can we update the computer?"
"We need to change the owner status to the company."
"Yes. In order to do that, we need to update it. Not really, I just couldn't be bothered to deal with this guy anymore.
Oh, good, because everybody's using it, not just user.
Fascinating. Can I run the update?
Sure.
Frickin' finally! Alright, so I'm finally starting to understand the appeal of these stories to those that don't really understand the jargon, because they're usually just silly cute little stories about people just not knowing anything about technology. And the writing is usually pretty good because, you have to be smart to be in IT, but anyways, let's move on. This story's called, It's Always DNS, and Now I'm in Trouble. So, me being the sole herder of electrons in the company has been a point of contention for a while, namely around the holiday. I hadn't taken a full day's holiday this year. My father works overseas and finally came back home after 4 years, so I booked the same time off work, 2 weeks. As it was a family occasion, I finally managed to arrange us a break at a forest resort we used to frequent back in the 90s for the second week. As such, I decided that I would go off the grid for week 2. However, I would have my laptop at home and be available for support for week 1. I hoped anything that would go bang would do so during the first week. For the most part, the stuff I've built is all automated. It's not quite Puppets level yet, but day-to-day is pretty hands-off. Of course, 2 weeks' time is enough for anything to start going wrong. So I tried to arrange cover. A downside is that we're 50% Ubuntu, 50% Mac. So finding an MSP willing to support Linux is difficult, if not impossible. Nobody I asked wanted to know. I was able to arrange phone support with a local AASP to cover the Macs, but Ubuntu support eventually fell to getting one of the developers to cover for me. Not doubting him, he did well given the circumstances, but apparently, I sowed the seeds of my own downfall even before I went away. Our backend is entirely Linux. Dev1 VMs running on KVM, providing DNS, LDAP, and several other services. Because this was running on quite old equipment, quite literally machines I'd pulled out of my junk pile, as a POC for why it would benefit a cloud-heavy company to develop stuff on premises. I recently got approval to build out proper servers, 3 VM hosts plus a file server, fitting my design of an N+2 redundancy for active systems. I was very pleased with the hardware I was able to get my hands on. 10 cores, 64 gigs RAM, 240 GB solid-state drive, 4x spinning disks, 10 gigs Ethernet, around £1,000 per machine. Supermicro board and some very neat rack mount chassis meant that I was dependent on the delivery of bits and pieces to get the machines built, and they came in drips and drabs. The last motherboard didn't turn up until the first week of my holiday, and demand for Windows virtual machines to test with was rising faster than my ability to find places to run them, so I had to throw the machines together, rack them, and get them usable far ahead of schedule. I was intending the switchover for after I came back. On the plus side, building the machines worked okay. I knew what I was doing, documented the first one, and built the next one identically. I was able to migrate the existing virtual machines without downtime and shut down the original hosts. One was a 2950. Our reduced power bills will soon cover the cost of the new servers. Machine number 3 was on my workbench in pieces before I completed the migration, but that wasn't the cause of the issue. So I was trying to build a modern, secure, local area network. I tried to set up everything encrypted and validated. This included SSH fingerprints in DNS. Now, I've used Bind for a long time now, for over a year at work with no problems. I have a master and 2 replicated clients. The master is not given out via DHCP, just the replicas. This has worked well, and generally, if I cause a problem on the master, the replicas don't get the updates and I can fix it without affecting the workstations. And this is where things went wrong. I was also trying to get Bind to accept dynamic updates. I've done so before, running DHCPD on the same server and pushing between daemons, but we have DHCP from Ubiquiti USG, so I was intending for clients to push their own IPs and SSH keys into DNS. I got this half working, the rest was a work in progress. Obviously, with dynamic bind zones, making any mutual changes requires a 3-step process. Freeze the zone to prevent dynamic updates interfering, make the update, thaw the zone. So I built the new virtual machine hosts and sent their SSH key fingerprints to the DNS master manually. I followed the 3 steps to add the keys in. I've done this before, no problem. Well, apart from the dynamic zone files being very differently formatted to the static ones, which bind does by itself. So, at step 2, I manually adjusted the entries to match the munged format. Then, step 3 didn't work. The zone refused to thaw. Restarting bind had no effect. The error message I got made no sense and turned up minimal results when searching. I had to read the bind source to find out what was causing it, but that didn't get me any closer, and removing entries I added didn't work either. Worse, bind decided the whole zone, land.company.com, was invalid and refused to load it. On the plus side, the change didn't reach the replicas, which continued to serve land.company.com without any of the updates that broke it. Okay, that's not ideal, but it's close to my holiday, so I'll take it. I decided not to do anything else in case I broke it further. So week 1 goes smoothly, with the expected people bugging me on Slack for assistance. For the most part, I don't mind, since it would take me a mere minute or two to VPN in and make the necessary change, versus my minion having to do something that he hasn't done before. I've shared all the instructions and documentation with him and walked him through some examples, but most of it relates to the hideous expansion of Windows that I want to keep under tight control. Nothing looks ominous, so I go all in for week 2. I shut off my Galaxy S5, hop the SIM into my ancient Nokia 6280, leave my work laptop and most of the distracting electronics at home, and head into the middle of a forest with my family, elderly grandmother, my dad, and his wife, for a week. And it's beautiful, silent, calm, peaceful, until Wednesday. Leaving the swimming pool for a fireworks display that evening, my phone finally catches the poor signal in the middle of nowhere and informs me of a text. It's my boss, who has my personal phone number, reporting a serious problem and asking me to call. Immediately thereafter, my phone runs flat. The lack of signal is burning through the battery. For those who don't know, phones adjust their transmission power based on the received signal strength. So when you have no signal, your phone is practically screaming in all directions to find a cell tower. And we're heading to a restaurant for dinner. And wouldn't you know it, my dad's and stepmother's phones have the same issue. The spotty signal has caused them to run out of battery as well. So for a few hours, I start wondering what could be bad enough to interrupt my holiday. I've accounted for more or less any problem I can think of at this point, but there's always the old failsafe. Some lines of code I'm not really sure how to read aloud. I'm really hoping it's not that, because I'm the only one in the company that knows it, even though I'm using fairly standard and straightforward configurations. Later that night, after cramming some power into my phone, has anyone noticed that old Nokias weren't designed to charge fast? Smartphones are a race to 75%, but dumb phones are a gentle stroll. After searching the resort for a signal, I managed to text my boss back. It's around 9 p.m. at this point, but she still wants to speak to me. I ask how catastrophic the problem is, and it's bad. It started off quite innocently. A user couldn't print. Don't we all love those? Now, that's unusual since our printers have been pretty reliable. My boss relays that $Minion did some debugging and determined that they could still print via IP address. Further research concludes that the round robins and aliases aren't working, and the whole internal domain is non-functional. Land.company.com isn't resolving, full stop. However, external sites are still working. Yup, this is a DNS problem, our side. The first solution would be to give bind a nudge, but there's a further problem. I never granted Minion access to the backend servers. I couldn't foresee a problem bad enough that he'd need it. Okay, there's a physical option, although it's quite drastic. I instruct my boss how to reboot the physical virtual machine hosts holding the replica virtual machines. Tap the power button, wait for all the virtual machines to shut down, wait for the host to power off, then start it back up. Figuring that's the best I can do for now, I hang up and go back to our lodge. I grab my personal laptop, of course I took one with me, jump on the free Wi-Fi, and start drafting an email to Minion outlining how to add himself to the necessary LDAP group to access the backend servers, using the emergency CN=admin password I left in the safe, and what he would then have to do to massage Bind into cooperating. It's then that I get a flash of inspiration. Some of you may have already worked it out. For those who don't have to deal with DNS, when you define a DNS zone, you set various parameters. One of those is the TTL, time to live. Often, this is set per record, since you don't want a silly short TTL, so the value can be cached, but equally not an excessively long one in case you need to push an update. However, the zone as a whole has a TTL. The replicas periodically pull from the master. The pieces fit together and I figure out that the TTL has expired. Ordinarily, the replicas would pull, but I broke the zone on the master, didn't I? The replicas worked exactly as designed, serving their caches until they expired, but then it all came to a screeching halt. At this stage, I realize there is nothing Minion can do, and nothing I can do until I get in on Monday. Even the instructions I gave to Minion to grant him access to the servers won't help. All of the servers use key-only authorization and pull SSH keys from LDAP. How do they query LDAP? DNS round robin, of course. So, in short, DNS failing has completely locked everyone out. My only course of action will be to add a screen and keyboard to the physical virtual machine hosts, tinker with etc hosts, regain access to the KVM consoles, and then massage Bind back into shape. I'm probably gonna have to head in on Sunday to do that. So we got home from our holiday a few hours ago. In that time, I've put my SIM card back in my smartphone, and as soon as it got an internet connection, Slack went crazy with notifications. There's a conversation between Minion, my boss, the vice president of engineering, and the CEO that I've been pulled into. And oh boy, they're quite rightfully not happy. In addition to the inconveniences of having to use IP addresses to print, the VPN isn't working. Some of the QA people work from home regularly and haven't been able to access their test virtual machines, and 2 people's desktops are locked out. Some quirk of SSSD seems to cause it to randomly abandon cached credentials if it can't access its backend for long enough, even though I tested it extensively by having machines off the LAN for weeks. I sent an apology and my best guess at what happened, including what I'm going to do to fix it. Of course, I get the flurry of "what can we do in the future" questions, but not the ones I'm expecting. Several are asking why the LDAP servers depend on internal DNS. Well, SSL, right? Can't validate SSL against an IP address, has to be FQDN. This is when I get curveballs thrown. The vice president of engineering asks why I'm running SSL on just our internal domain. Well, passwords. Okay, but then why do I need to validate SSL, not just allow the machines to accept any old certificate? Because that would discard about 90% of the security of SSL and allow easy MITMing? The CEO stepped in and asked us to continue this conversation on Monday. Now, I get that I caused the problem, that I'm not denying. But ironically, by trying not to make things worse, I seem to have made them much worse, with a neatly delayed reaction. First thing I'm going to do when Bind starts working again is increase the zone TTL to a month. I suspect I'm also about to have a very difficult conversation about why I'm following best practices. When it works, we'll get the job done. Well, I understood like maybe 5% of that. But I really hope you guys enjoyed it and got a kick out of it.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode.